Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. This is the first of our dating and marriage series. Very excited to get this started, and hopefully, it's going to be something that really all of you will find very informative and meaningful. This is for you. This is really something that is meant to enhance your life, something to make your relationships um, more successful, meaningful, transformative, even perhaps. And I hope that it's going to be as what you intend, but really also for you to all to share with me your feedback. If you have questions, always feel free to send something to me, either email or text or whatever it is. And hopefully we'll try to get everything we can. It's there's so much material here, and I will say it first off the bat. I'm not the expert. I don't claim to be the expert, but thankfully, over the last 5 years, I've been able to learn a tremendous amount from the experts. And that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. Two people in particular is doctors John and Julie Gottman of the Gottman Institute in Seattle. And something fascinating about the Gottmans is they have something called, in Seattle, a love lab, which is, where they have people come in to a couple, and the couple knows what's going on. So they have this couple come into what they call the love lab, and there are cameras, there are things that take their blood pressure, their pulse, they have urine samples, and they're told to live life just normal, talk to each other like you're normally talking to each other. And they are able to film this couple, and they know they're being filmed. It's done. Everything is done knowingly. And the Gottmans are able to predict with over 90% accuracy which couples will be married in 5 years. Over 90% accuracy, because there are very specific things that they're looking for, and there are very specific things that all successful couples do, and unfortunately that the non-successful couples also, there are certain specifics that they do. They may come out differently in each couple, but they're consistent in every single one. And what we're going to be learning is what separates the masters from the disasters. And specifically in tonight's class, we're going to be covering purpose of relationship. We're also going to be discussing who is Mr. and Mrs. Right for me, and all the different things that might, some commonly asked questions that I have, also a few of those that we'll get to tonight. And then we'll, and throughout, anyone's should be more than welcome to ask any questions. The second person that we're going to credit for a lot of this data and research is a very dear friend of mine and mentor, David Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman is a world-renowned, internationally acclaimed researcher, psychologist who spent a tremendous amount of his life during researching mental health and human behavior, has even trained parts and branches of the government in lie detection and law enforcement because of his research in human behavior. And he's also tremendous amounts of research that we are going to be incorporating in our sessions tonight and over the next few weeks. So the first, off the bat, before we get into what is purpose of relationship, we're here to learn a little bit together. We're learning about what is proper dating and marriage. And to make this more exciting, what are the benefits? I was thinking maybe start off, what are the benefits of, good dating and ultimately a healthy marriage? And I've identified 3 main benefits, and there are probably a lot more, but we'll start with these 3. Number 1 is quality of life. The research has been clear that that our quality of life is very tied to quality of relationships, because human beings are social, right? Which makes this pandemic so so hard, is because social distancing. But pre-COVID and hopefully post-COVID, all of that stuff, right? What makes human beings so dynamics, that our ability to connect, right? There are no other living creatures, non-human beings, that get together on Zoom 8 o'clock on Thursdays to learn, right? That's part of who we are. So our quality of life will be directly and intimately connected to quality of relationships. That's number one. Number two, our children. The research is very clear that children who grow up in a home of constant fighting and bickering are much more prone to anxiety. And the answer to, and the reason behind that is very clear, because as children are, young and transition to adulthood, they are basically relying on mom and dad for everything. Mom and dad are their foundation. They are their everything, right? That's why sometimes if they go to camp or school, they get homesick, right? If that foundation has cracks, then their everything has cracks, and that's nerve-wracking. So the correlation is is very easy to understand. That's number two. And the third thing, from a religious standpoint and perspective, I'm going to read to you a line from Rabbi Vital. Rabbi Vital lived hundreds of years ago. He was the disciple and student of the Arizal. The Arizal is probably the most famous Kabbalist back in the, I want to say 14th or 15th century. Someone wants to research that, let me know later if I'm correct, but somewhere in that window. And he has a famous line that's been quoted many times, and it is incredibly powerful and true. And that is, I'm going to read it in Hebrew and translate. Ki midosav shel adam nimdados ach v'rak kefi yachusu im ishto. And that is, after 120 years, how is a person's character going to be judged in heaven? How is Hashem, how is the Almighty going to judge their character? And he says, the way he or she corresponds and interacts with their spouse. And he goes on to explain, because a person could be the greatest community member. He could be the most amazing person, leader in his family or in his business or wherever it is. But all of a sudden, when it comes to his family, it's much easier for him to, no one's looking, it's private, it's in the bedroom, it's in, the cameras are off, it's not in the public eye. He can become a totally different person. Says Rabbi Chaim Vital, the way the Almighty, after 120, after we pass on and Hashem wants to judge our character, he's one place to look, and that will tell us all, how did he act at home? How did he talk? So for those three reasons, whether it is the quality of our own life, quality of our children's life, and our interpersonal relationship, and how Hashem will look at our midos, our character, it's for those reasons we see such a tremendous benefit to having successful dating and, of course, marriage. So I want to preface my thoughts on purpose of relationship, which is what tonight's discussion is, with the following, what we'll call the story of you and me. So what is the story of me and you? So the story is like this. We were all 20, 30 plus years ago born, and we were probably 5 or 6 pounds. We were this tiny little thing, okay? This tiny little thing that was once upon a time you and me probably went through a very, troublesome labor. It was probably the mother, it was probably painful. It was probably not exactly anything, they say, are you in labor? The nurses say, are you having discomfort? No, it's not discomfort. It's pain, right? That's the way it is. It's not discomfort. I love the rosy touch up to make it a little not so hard, but it's pain, right? And then the baby's born. The mom might nurse the baby, whatever it is. The infant's taken away, and 2 hours later, baby's crying. You might wonder, baby, let mom sleep. Mom just went through a really hard time, right? Mom just went through what for you to be born. Can't do any better than 2 hours. Right? And the obvious answer is the baby doesn't think that way. And then another 2 hours, and then another 2 hours, right? What's behind all this? Because we come into this world, me and you, all of us, we come into this world as takers. That is the way we enter this world. We are a taker. That's the way we enter this world. And it's okay. Not only is it okay, it's the way it's supposed to be. And life is transforming that taker into something bigger and greater. Let's fast forward. Okay, so now the 2-hour-old baby is now 2 weeks old, and now 2 months old. 2 months now, the baby's still taking. It's purely taking from mom and dad, right? It's still 100% of a taker. And that which it gives back, we don't want. Doesn't smell good, taste good, or anything like that, right? So the baby's still a pure taker. Fast forward a few more months, right? The baby could roll over for the first time, which is like, oh my gosh, celebration, right? So the baby's starting to give back a little bit, right? Then a few months later than that, now we could say maybe, you could say mom, maybe you could say dad, maybe, or more because they want more food, whatever it is, right? All these little things. A year old, fast forward another year, okay, now they're crawling and hopefully walking, right? They're still taking though. They're still pure takers. They are taking to the extreme with no limits and no consideration. Fast forward a couple more years, right? They have a few more months, a few more years, they start to have play dates and they learn names, right? Then the baby, now toddler, then becomes a child and has friends. Now friends, when they're in that 4 years old or 5 years old or 6 years old, still taking, but they could finally, if you were to ask them, can you give me that? They could actually listen to instructions. So their level of giving has expanded a little bit. Fast forward a few more years, right? Now we hit what we call the teen years, right? Oh, those teen years. Oh, we love them, right? Everyone but mom and dad, right? So teenage years. So teenage years where we get really deep in friends, right? We kind of forget mom and dad's name and number, except for the credit card, right? And we're pretty big on each other's peeps, right? We want each other's friends and our buddies, guys and gals, right? We get home as late as we can and we leave home as early as we can, and everything is about friends and peer pressure and more peer pressure and friends, right? And the level of taking from mom and dad is still high, but hopefully there's a little giving, like when the teenager starts to behave and says thank you and maybe a little, right? From those years, after the friends get deeper, right? So they're hitting upper teens and then 20s, they start to think their, mind broadens a little bit and they're into their 20s and low 20s, mid 20s, upper 20s and 30. They're starting to think about sharing, not just taking, but sharing, right? And that's, of course, the dating phase, sharing on a higher level, not just taking. And then the person, will date, engaged, get married, and now the sharing doesn't just become sharing, it's intense sharing. It's sharing in the sunny days, it's sharing in the rainy days, right? It's sharing in the morning, in the night, and really early in the morning sometimes, right? Or late at night, depending how you call it. But it's sharing intense. And then, hopefully, fast forward some time, a child is born, and the whole thing starts all over. And what once was that 4, 5, 6, 7 pound baby, which was taking and knew nothing of taking, is now giving unconditionally. That's the story of me and you, pretty much, and everyone. What's behind that? What is behind this transformation of being an extreme taker, which is not just okay and normal, but the preferred approach? Imagine if you had a baby that was born that knew how to, give whatever it was. It's like, oh, what's going on here, right? So what's behind all that? So we know much of life, putting aside relationships for just a second, much of life, Jewish life, religious life, especially in Judaism, is to connect us to Hashem. whether it's through prayer, or whether it's through a mitzvah, a commandment, or chesed, or learning Torah. We're connecting our physical bodies that has a spiritual soul inside it to connecting us to Hashem. And relationships also have that as well. You know, when a bride and a groom, when a chassan and kala get married and they're under the chuppah, under the canopy, you know what he says to her that makes him married? The words, Harei at mekudash li. You are, behold, you are mekudash to me. Mekudash is the Hebrew word kadosh, which is holiness, right? Like we say in shul, kadosh, right? Like sometimes Shabbat is Shabbos Kodesh, right? Holy. So in marriage or in relationships in general, there's a spiritual and holy component inside it. How does that work? So listen to this fascinating thought. In the world of physicality, how do I get close to something? So it's easy. You shorten the distance between A and B, right? You close the gap, that's how you get close. That's in the world of physics, right? In the world of spirituality, where space is not measured with the same textbook, right? So how do you get close in the world of spirituality? So the answer is not with physical closeness, rather through similarities. What makes me similar to something makes me closer to something in the world of spirituality. We know Hashem, our Father, loving, kind Father in heaven, is the ultimate giver, is the ultimate, right, source of kindness. Hashem is constantly giving us, and we take it for granted that we can hear, smell, speak, walk, all these things, right? We take it very for granted. Sometimes it's, by the way, not talking COVID aside, sometimes it's worthwhile stepping inside a hospital, and then you'll thank Hashem again for the ability that we could walk, talk, use the facilities, eat on our own, shower on our, all those things that we take so for granted. But putting that aside for a second, Hashem, who bestows so much kindness to us, he's the ultimate giver. Well, I can't get close to God in physicality because God doesn't have this physical nature that we do. So how do I get close to God? I have to become similar to God. I become similar to God, therefore, through giving. So this entire transformation of an extreme taker to extreme giver is our opportunity to become close through God. This time, not through prayer, not through Torah study, but through interpersonal relationships. And that's my introduction to purpose of relationship. Now, we'll get into the dating and the marriage part. But I felt that was a worthwhile intro, and judging from your facial expressions, not too many people are arguing with me, right? Okay, good. Thank you. So, moving along. So, into the dating and marriage part. So, for those who are single, this will be very helpful. For those who are married, I still think it will be helpful, maybe be applied a little bit differently. And of course, you'll be able to help someone else who's single. But nevertheless, getting into the dating part. So the Gottman Institute, right, has identified what we're going to call the 3 levels of love, right? It's good to fall in love with a person if you're going to want to marry them, right? I hope that's there, right? So what are the 3 levels of love? So what they call the 3 levels of love. The first level, as we could have all guessed, is romance. Second level, and we're going to come back to this, so if I'm talking fast, bear with me. But the first level is romance. The second level is what they'll call the building trust mode. And the third level is commitment, okay? Romance, we all know, right? He or she, attracted, like, chemistry, fun, similar values, great. That's level 1, though. Where many people make a mistake is that they don't do the things that transform level 1 to level 2 and level 2 to level 3. And it's not by accident, because what comes out is between levels 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, there's something that comes up called conflict. The Gottman Institute has identified 6 areas of conflict where every single married couple has. Okay, 6 areas. There could be more, but at least these 6, right? I'm sorry if I'm scaring anyone, but every single couple has these 6 areas of conflict, and they are with work, in-laws, money, finances, intimacy and intercourse, housework, and kids. Those 6 areas, right, are the areas of conflict that every single marriage has. And don't get me wrong, there are, one of the important things is conflict resolution, which we'll get to in weeks 2, 3, and 4. But those are the 6 areas of conflict. When those 6 areas are dealt with properly, that allows romance to turn into trust, and then trust to turn into commitment. Okay? But so those conflicts should not be viewed as something that like, oh, what are you getting in the way? No, those are the things that, if dealt properly, will then transition from level 1 to level 2 and level 2 to level 3. Many people, or I say all people, that just stay at level 1, romance is not forever, right? I mean, the wedding book is like maybe looked at, I don't know how often, once a year on the anniversary, if that, right? I mean, romance is not forever. Romance is important, right? It's needed, right? Helps things move along, right? It gets started, lights the fire, right? But it's not forever, right? So those are 6 areas of conflict that we're going to get more into the details, why they are, and how what the masters do and what the disasters do in terms of best practices. But those are the 6 areas that the Gottmans have identified. No, how about we stop here? Anyone could unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions, or send me in the chat. And if no questions, that means I was so clear or so not so clear. But feel free if anyone wants to fire away while we pause for just one moment. Okay, all right. So we'll get to a couple pointers in the dating process, as we'll call. Okay, couple pointers. Generally speaking, when I say generally speaking, I mean because there are exceptions. So, bear that in mind. But the general rule of thumb is people who have good relationships with immediate family, which includes mother, father, sister, and brother, except for that brother, right? Or that sister, right? No, really every single brother, sister, mother, and father. People who have good relationships with immediate family are more likely to have good relationships with their spouse. And conversely, people who have the no talking with this brother or the no talking with this sister, people who have that are unfortunately less likely. Now, what if it's, are there exceptions? Yes, there are exceptions. But short of the minority of the cases, people who do have conflict with immediate family, and I don't mean conflict as they got into a little thing. I'm not talking about fights, unfortunately, the heavy stuff. Those people are more likely to have a problem. Again, of course, that's generally speaking. Now, just because they have a problem doesn't mean they can't fix it. Just it's something to be aware of. Another thing, being that people on dating are in their best behavior, right? So that means that if on their best behavior, right, they could show a temper, they can show anger, they're negative constantly, all those things. If that's what they're like on their best behavior, right, then think about when, the camera's off. So, that's just another pointer. Now, I want to get to something called heuristics. Heuristics are these like little shortcuts that we take. Our brain has so much takes in so much around the world every second of the day. There's so many things that could be going on. We automatically filter things in and filter things out, and our brain makes quick assumptions, right? Without even realizing it. So what happens many times in the dating process is that a person could find someone or they date someone, and what could happen is there's something called the scarcity effect. And scarcity effect is similar to is a type of heuristic, because what the scarcity effect does is that since he or she is scarce, right? Because oh my gosh, there's only one of them, right? So that has the ability to disrupt chemistry. To mean that's why people on a job interview, right? I really want this job. There's only one of these jobs, right? So you have the scarcity effect disrupting chemistry, and therefore I might be more or less nervous on the job. Why? Why? Because being nervous makes you have a better job interview? No, quite the opposite, right? So what happens is when this chemistry is disrupted in a person's mind, they have all these thoughts, emotions, things going on, swimming around that could really disrupt critical and logical thinking. Therefore, asking yourself questions or asking other people questions, getting what we call perspective, is incredibly important, especially deep in the dating scene. For example, if I put my hand right in front of my face, right, I'm gonna have a hard time seeing you. The more I take away my hand, my perspective broadens and I'm able to see my surroundings much better. Therefore, when a person they're sucked in and their emotions are running wild and they can't think straight, right? So it's gonna be a hard time to come and think rationally. You ever heard, if you're angry, just be quiet, because if you're not quiet, you're gonna say something that you're gonna regret, right? That same idea. So what are the questions? So we've identified, through the research of David Lieberman, has identified 4 questions that's good for a person to ask themselves in the dating process. Now, you don't have to ask this to yourself on every single date, but 4 general basic questions. And it's also relevant to married people too, perhaps a little differently. But those 4 questions are: do I feel a natural sense of respect towards him or her? On my own, right? Do I feel a natural sense of respect? Okay, because we're looking through this through a Jewish lens, right? So we know that in Judaism, our rabbis tell us that a marriage has to have ahava and kavod. The Hebrew term is ahava migufo umechabdo yoser migufo. It has to have ahava and it has to have kavod. Ahava, as we know, love, and kavod is respect, right? So the first question is, can I, on my own, naturally respect him or her? Number 2, do I want to give to him or her? Right? Giving is going to be a biggie. So do I feel like, this person, yeah, I want to give to them, or like, I'll save it for later, right? Do I naturally want to give to them? Number 3, here we go a little deeper. Am I okay with the way he or she is right now? Now, oh yeah, we're going to fix that in years 1, 2, and 3, and then we're going to live years 3 and on forever happily ever after, right? No, am I happy, okay, want to give and respect the way they are right now? And number 4 is, am I okay with my son or daughter eventually being like this person? If the answer is yes, okay, nice. If the answer is mine is this, that, right? Okay, you got the idea. Those four questions, what they do is they gain perspective throughout all the dating process. There's so many emotions, there's so many thoughts, so many questions, and without a person taking a step back and thinking over these 4 things, right? Our perspective can be skewed, and it's important to keep our eye on the ball, because there's a lot of what we'll call side stuff, petty stuff, that can get in the way and be very distracting. Keeping our eye on the ball, right, could be done very well with these 4 questions and have a much better result. What I want to do now is go to what we'll call 4 or 5, let's say about 4 FAQs, as they say, frequently asked questions. And we're going to conclude with a great thought, open for questions, and let you know what the next 2-3 weeks will have. What we'll have. So first, a couple questions, very, very, very common questions are, do we need to be on the same level of religious observance? Do we need to practice Judaism at the same level? And the short answer is, I don't think so. And I think it has to be that way because inevitably, no 2 people are on the same level, right? Any 2 people. Everyone's at a different station of life. We're individuals, right? Everyone by default is at a different level of life. So if that's the case, then that means every single couple is going to be at a different level. Now, the question then becomes, well, how far apart can they be? And to answer that properly, so the question isn't can they be different? Of course they can be different. The question is how different. So to answer that, we have to go back to the 4 questions, and that will answer this. As long as he and she can respect each other at that level, wherever that is, and they want to give and respect, and they're okay with them the way they are, and they are okay with their children like that, then that's good. That's fine. But if it's like, you do that, you eat that, you do that, I don't respect you. Okay, so then we're getting into an area where that might be a problem. But as long as you have the respect, you want to give, and you're okay with it, and you could, you know what, you have your flaws, you know what, I've got my flaws too, right? Which is everyone, by the way. But as long as that approach can be taken, difference of religiosity level should not disrupt. Now, obviously, there might be challenges, but it should, just because one's a little more or one's a little less, that automatically should not, in my opinion, disqualify things. Now, since we're in an election year, what if they have different political views? One's thinking this way, and one's thinking that way, right? And I believe it's the same answer. I believe that as long as they could see each other's differences as, hey, it's not the way I would have thought, but I respect that. I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me that much. If they could do it, now the problem is not everyone's able to do that. But if they can do that, why not? Remember, our similarities is not what makes life exciting. It's our differences that we appreciate and invite that make things great. So I don't think they have to be. It makes it easier, but they don't have to be on the same, they don't have to have the same political view. Now, unfortunately, what we see that if you don't agree to me, then you're a this and a that. And if I don't agree to you, you call me this and you call me this and a that, right? So that's a problem. Now, it doesn't have to be that way, nor should it be that way. But I don't think they have to be politically aligned. The research has shown that every single marriage has, we don't agree. Can we agree to disagree? And can we also agree not to always bring it up? Every marriage has that. So if that could be this, right, politics, right? If we could agree that we don't necessarily see eye to eye and we don't need to bring it up, right? So then, yes, absolutely. But if it's always going to be on and you're always playing the news and watching the news and bringing it up and debating it, that could be a problem. It could be a problem. Number 3, does the other person need to be stunning, gorgeous, handsome, beautiful, right? So what's the answer to that? So the answer is that there needs to be some level of attraction, right? There needs to be some attraction, but more than that does not need to be the most amazing you've ever seen. In fact, what we're going to get to in our class called Bedroom and Beyond is that there are a lot of things that go into the equation of healthy and good intimacy, intercourse between husband and wife, that attraction is one of them, and it's an important one. But there are a lot of other things. Gottman has a list of 12 things, 12 that will tell best practices for a healthy bedroom marriage. So the answer is some attraction, yes, but it doesn't need to be the jaw-dropping. You know, Hollywood has not done us favors in this arena, and I will say that, and we'll leave it with that. And question number, is that it? I think I had another one. Oh, yes. And the last one is, if one grew up in a home where the marriage was unstable, if one grew up in a home where there was constant conflict and fighting, will they be able to have a healthy marriage? So it's a complicated question, actually. The research has shown that children are likely to carry out parents' mannerisms and quirks. You know, those things, they happen. They come out.
It's frozen.
Oh, can you hear me now?
It's all right.
Can you hear me now? Is this any better? Okay. So what we see here is that people are likely to continue their parents' behavior. Now, they are likely to continue, they don't have to. So that means there is a slight inkling to, to repeat what a person has grown up with, but they don't have to. But the key factor is to be aware of those things, to be aware that there was something that they grew up with and they do not want to continue. Now, sometimes you can have the opposite effect, that I grew up with something that I did not like so much, I want to make sure I never give it to my children, right? That's also possible. The key is that frustration cannot stay as frustration. The frustration needs to translate into action. And that's important. So awareness and action, being proactive, learning the things, coming to something like this tonight and learning that. So someone who grew up in that home is more likely. The answer is yes, they are more likely. Do they have to? No, they do not have to. It's totally up to them. So we spoke about kavod, we spoke about respect, and now we want to speak about the last thing, ahava, which is love. And we spoke about the purpose of relationship. We know that every relationship that has in it a deep level of love is going to last. But what's fascinating about the word love in Hebrew, the word ahava, is that it's spelled, right? If you want to spell it out in Hebrew, it's aleph, hey, beis, hey, ahava. The middle two letters, the hey and the beis, spell hav, which means to give. And that's why the famous old question, why do parents love children so much more than children love their parents? Is because who's giving to who? Who's the taker? Who's the giver, as we started, right? Children will never love their parents as much as their parents love them. It's just not going to happen. And it's impossible because one is giving unconditionally. One is taking, and sometimes as much as they can, right? So therefore, the level of love will be much more intense. And with this, I want to conclude with the following thought. The Talmud tells us in Tractate Gittin in the Talmud that when a couple gets divorced, unfortunately, if they were not able to keep it together, the Mizbeach cries. What's the Mizbeach? The Mizbeach is the altar where the karbanot, the offerings, were brought upon in the temple by the priest, the Kohen Gadol. So think about it. What is the thing that is symbolized to be broken, an inanimate object? That's the altar. And it would always bother me, why the altar? Why the Mizbeach? And I believe the answer is like this. What does a Mizbeach symbolize? What does the altar symbolize? The altar symbolizes that I love God, and therefore I'm willing to give something up, an animal, sacrifice an animal to give to God, to further my relationship and love and passion for the Creator. That's what a Mizbeach is. We bring sacrifices. The Hebrew word for a sacrifice is karban. Well, the word karban in Hebrew is spelled kuf, resh, beis, nun, has the root of karov, which means closeness. So when a couple, unfortunately, was not able to keep it together, they were not able to stay married. They couldn't figure it out and give. The thing that symbolizes giving for love is crying, you guys couldn't do it. This was the answer. I was the key. The Mizbeach is thinking. So this is what we're here tonight to think about, and hopefully in the coming weeks. How do we transition from this ego-minded baby infant that was born as a pure taker into a pure giver? How do we transition into people that are thinking outside our own needs? Of course we have needs. right? We have needs and then we have wants. Most of them are wants, right? But how do we transition out of that into what we want? And then we'll never be that person, that couple that has the Mizbeach, the altar, crying on us. So with that, I open to any questions. Let you know that next week we're going to be talking about the 7 principles of the Gottman Institute, what they have outlined as their 7 principles. That's next Thursday at 8. From there, we go into conflict, fascinating stuff on conflict. And from there, Bedroom and Beyond is the 4th week. And of course, if this is yours time, if anyone has something that they want us to spend more time on, by all means, please message me, email me, and we can spend more time and do more things on that. So any questions? Okay, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for that. I have a question. So you mentioned briefly differences of observance, differences of political orientation. What about differences of personality? So you hear a lot the opposites attract, but to what end is that actually true?
Yes, it is true. I see my wife's on here. It is true. Yes, opposites do attract. Introverts and extroverts are married. I just met an introvert who's married to an extrovert, and they are, on opposite sides. Again, these differences make life exciting. We don't want to marry, a carbon copy of ourselves. That's a graveyard, right? We want to have excitement. Yeah, like, what? You like that? Are you crazy? I mean, oh, whoops. Yeah, right. So these differences is what makes life exciting. So yes, differences in personalities, by all means. Yeah, it's fun, right? Couples who learn to laugh together post the romance phase, right, have more successful relationships. This is what John Gottman said on an interview with Neil Satin on the Relationships Alive podcast. One of the things that they've learned that successful couples do 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, they're still laughing. They're still friends. They're still having a good time. Differences allow for that, not these similarities. Now, usually in the dating stage, like, there's all these like similarities that they have. Oh my gosh, you like Crest toothpaste? So do I. Like, where there's all these stupid things that we like, and there are similarities. But as a person gets married, and the relationship develops, right, more differences will become pronounced. The reason, and I realized I skipped over this, it was in my notes. The reason why conflict comes up between stages 1 and 2 is because that's when the relationship simultaneously gets transformed from a regular relationship to something special about marriage, which consists of the good, the bad, and the ugly, which every single person has, right? Sometimes when there's someone that I really respect and I really admire, I think to myself, okay, I like him. I don't want to get to know him too much because I don't want to see the ugly side of it, right? I have that. This happens all the time, right? But, I say that tongue in cheek, but the truth of the matter is, in those quote unquote bad and ugly times, the differences are brought out, and it's our choice how we respond to them. If we become disgusted or repulsive and we feel we're superior to it, or we embrace it and realize, I have mine and the other one has theirs, and we're going to make this stuff work. I hope that answers. Okay. Alrighty. Well, thank you all very much for coming. Really appreciate that. And looking forward to seeing you Thursday next week, 8 o'clock.